Today marks a turning point in U.S. economic history. President Donald Trump has officially introduced a sweeping set of import tariffs. While these tariffs have been previewed for months, their implementation signals what he calls a great day for America. But beneath the headlines and political soundbites lies a much deeper shift, one that's both economic and strategic, and one that not everyone will recognize right away. Let's be clear, I'm not here to speculate on how the Dow Jones will react or how global supply chains will shuffle. I want to talk about what these tariffs really mean and what they say about how Trump views America's place in the world. Three faces of tariffs: economic, political, and strategic. Trump's tariff package breaks down into three categories: economic tariffs, political tariffs, and what can only be described as defensive tariffs. At the core is a flat 10% universal import tariff applied across the board to all goods entering the United States. Think of it as a nationwide VAT, but only for imports. The U.S. has never had a national value-added tax. Sales taxes exist only at the state level. But now, in effect, Trump has created a pseudo-VAT on imports and done it unilaterally. Some pundits are shocked, but in reality, this idea isn't new. Other countries do it all the time. In Russia, for example, there's VAT, protective duties for local automakers, and even recycling fees on imported cars. What Trump has done is repackage a common policy with a distinctly American flavor and a lot of political theater. But here's where it gets interesting. On top of the 10%, Trump has imposed sector-specific protective tariffs. All imported cars and computers will now carry a 25% tariff. The logic here is simple: punish foreign producers, reward American ones, and motivate international companies to bring their factories to U.S. soil. If that was all, this might have been quietly passed through Congress, but Trump doesn't do quiet, he does spectacle. And that's because this is not just about economics, it's about global positioning and a new vision of American power. A trade war with China? Or the opening salvo of something bigger? The most aggressive move? A 54% total tariff on all imports from China. This combines previous 20% penalties with a new 34% layer. It's not just a response to China's trade practices, it's a direct escalation. And it's not just a trade war, it may well be a precursor to something more serious. Trump's first term saw him wage a similar economic battle with Beijing, but this time it's more strategic. The message is clear. China is not just a competitor, it's a threat, a rival power. And Trump's America is gearing up for a long, multi-dimensional confrontation. But if that's predictable, what's shocking is who else made the list. Tariffs on allies, the end of the old world order? Here's where Trump's new doctrine diverges from anything we've seen before. The following countries, many of them longtime U.S. allies, are now subject to higher-than-base tariffs. India, 26%; Japan, 24%; European Union, 20%; Taiwan, 32%; South Korea, 25%; Israel, 17%; Philippines, 17%; a U.S. military outpost aimed at countering China. These aren't enemies, these are allies, and yet Trump is treating them like trade rivals. Why? Because in Trump's worldview, alliances are transactional. If you can't help the U.S. confront China, or if you're not fully aligned with American industrial or military goals, then you're just another player in a zero-sum game. Who was spared? A glimpse into Trump's new world map. Interestingly, many nations were left untouched, stuck with just the basic 10% import tariff. South American countries: Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Panama, all at 10%. Middle Eastern oil states: Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Turkey. AUKUS members: the UK and Australia, despite Trump criticizing Australia in recent speeches. Africa, entirely unaffected. But let's be real, Africa isn't currently central to Trump's strategic calculus. So what can we learn from this? Trump is redrawing the map of U.S. economic alliances. And he's doing it with surgical precision. Latin America rising? Pay special attention to Latin America. Early in Trump's new campaign, Senator Marco Rubio, a key ally, toured the region, marking the first such diplomatic mission in decades. That wasn't random. Trump sees a future in building a Western Hemisphere economic bloc. a new kind of Monroe Doctrine 2.0. By keeping tariffs low on Latin American exports, Trump may be inviting those countries into a new partnership, one that cuts China out of the loop and strengthens U.S. dominance in the region. NATO out new alliances in. Notice who's getting preferential treatment. Not the NATO countries, but those aligning with newer American military frameworks. This is part of a bigger shift. Trump has never hidden his disdain for NATO, which he sees as bloated, outdated, and ineffective. Instead, he's laying the groundwork for more agile, loyal, and U.S.-centric military partnerships, often with countries that are also economic underdogs. In this world, economic loyalty becomes a form of tribute. If you're not a key player in the new geopolitical chessboard, then you pay your dues, literally. Europe, Japan, South Korea, America's new cash cows. So where does this leave the traditional U.S. allies with advanced economies, Europe, Japan, South Korea? They're being monetized. Under Trump's doctrine, if a country is wealthy but not useful in containing China or reshaping the global order, it becomes a target. The EU, for example, is seen as soft on China, unwilling to commit militarily to defending Taiwan, and likely to resist any U.S.-led sanctions regime. Trump's conclusion: Europe's economic power should be redirected to America. And if that means forcing deindustrialization in the EU while moving production to the U.S., so be it. Pay up now, compete later. Will these tariffs actually happen? Here's the kicker. These tariffs are scheduled to go into effect between April 5-9. But given Trump's track record, nothing is guaranteed. He may delay, modify, or suspend them entirely depending on how negotiations unfold or how markets react. However, if the full set of tariffs sticks, especially the 20–30% range for major U.S. allies, it could mark the end of the post-Cold War economic consensus. The so-called golden age of globalization may be over. For Europe, Japan, and South Korea, the era of prosperity built on cheap trade and open access to the U.S. market could be closing fast. What we're seeing is not just a tariff policy, it's a global reordering. Trump is using trade as a weapon, not just against rivals like China, but against friends who don't align with his vision. It's bold, it's disruptive. And if he wins this trade war, it might just become the cornerstone of a new American century. One where the U.S. doesn't just lead the world economically, but reshapes it in its own image. The tariffs are only the beginning.